Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Dissecting Gundam. I am Hatter, your host, and today we start diving into some of the real narrative going on in the series beyond the overarching conflict that makes up the setting. There's some really unique character moments that I think set us up for some dramatic reveals later on, and we start to see the dynamic of the White Base crew unfold. Plus we get some neat cultural flavor thrown in as well. Let's hop right into it. There's a little bit of neat world building going on. When the hull of the colony is breached by missile fire, a Federation officer deploys the bubblegum balls that are pulled towards the decompressing vacuum and creates a sticky seal that stops the breach. It's like a fix-a-flat for a spaceship, and it really creates some verisimilitude to sell the idea that humans have been living in space for nearly a century at this point. Here we have some localization changes to help out the English dub viewers, and as a parent myself, the idea of losing track of your child during a battle, or any disaster situation for that matter, is pretty much your worst freaking nightmare. This is one of those scenes that I think gets overlooked when critics suggest that Gundam doesn't adequately show the true horrors of war. Worth noting, however, that in the subbed version, this mother is crying out for her Yuri, who's the name of the child, whereas in the dub, she cries out for my baby, just in case it wasn't clear. This is a pivotal plot moment when the captain of the White Base is critically injured during Char's attack. This not only sets up the circumstances for young Bright Noah to assume command, but as we'll see later on, the White Base crew becomes something of pariahs among the Federation ranks, which may not have been the case if the captain had been able to continue to advocate for the young crew, as he does in the next couple of episodes we'll see going forward. In this really quick scene, we see that Slender barely escaped from Side 7, and he fears repercussion from Char. It's a small detail, but it helps inform the audience of how ruthless the discipline of Zeon can be. It's not as if Slender acted out of turn or abandoned his post. In fact, he was the only one that followed orders, and he barely made it out alive to provide valuable intel about the Gundam, and yet he feared punishment for it. Now, we've already seen some of this nurturing quality from Frabo so far, but here we see her save several children from an explosion and escort them aboard White Base before consoling them, further cementing her future position aboard the ship as its resident caretaker. Additionally, we get our first real introduction to the character Sayla Mass, who we see delegating and calling out orders amidst the chaos. I think that this is an often overlooked quality of Sayla is her natural leadership ability, her cool-headedness under pressure, and she has a knack for observing talents in other people. Now, as Frabo sees to the captain's injuries, Bright informs us that all of the engineers and soldiers from Side 7 have been killed, meaning that not only are they defenseless, but they are also without the means and personnel to maintain the White Base and the Gundam. Here we meet Mirai Yashima, and again we see the pieces of the White Base puzzle are sliding into place, as she declares her ability to pilot cruisers. Each member of the crew is bringing a talent or skill that makes them an asset to the ship. Now, this is one of those important bits of information that's going to become a major plot element down the line. The captain recognizes Mirai's family name, and as we will come to find, her connections and her family will prove to be both a hindrance and a benefit later on. Here's a bit of characterization for Char that reminds me a great deal of the first time that Darth Vader speaks to the Emperor in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. We learn that Char isn't the leader of Zeon, and he's not even particularly highly ranked. He actually reports to a Vice Admiral Dozil Zabi, who is the first of the Zabi family that we encounter. Additionally, this line showing Dozil's surprise about losing 3 Zakus is another way of providing context for just how powerful the Gundam really is. Zakus may be the grunt mobile suit of the series, but they represent a substantial investment. They're not meant to be seen as hordes of bad guys the way you might see orcs in Lord of the Rings or stormtroopers in Star Wars. Here we are given a bit of insight into Char's military philosophy, and maybe even a bit of foreshadowing about his coming revenge arc. As Sun Tzu might phrase it, plan for what is difficult while it is easy. Similarly, Char is trying to eliminate the threat of the Gundam while its potential is still unknown by attacking while the enemy is unprepared. In this moment, we see Char as a cunning soldier, but little do we know just how tactical he can be. This is a minor gripe, but here Mirai confirms that she knows about Amuro and that he is a whiz kid, but the subbed version says that he has a love of machines, while the English dub calls him a techno freak. I'm not sure if the tone here is meant to be derogatory toward Amuro, but we do know that Bright is clearly unimpressed. Here we meet Kai Shiden, and we get a lot more character development than you might realize. First, he confirms that he escaped without looking for other survivors, which we are meant to infer that he is a bit of a coward or selfish. And furthermore, we get a bit of cultural mistranslation that I think many English-speaking viewers are going to miss. You see, in this moment, just before Sayla slaps Kai, he asks if they're coming with. Now, in English, we don't have contextual pronouns the way that other languages do, but in Japanese, he uses the word omai, which I'm probably butchering the translation of, But it's an informal way of saying you that is often used by males toward females, and it implies a level of condescension or lower status of the person being addressed. And so, without this understanding, people might be critical of Sayla's actions, the way that she just goes up and slaps him, and they might suggest that the characterization is weak or lacking, when in fact it's the viewer's understanding of the context of the situation that is lacking. Again, even after being slapped, Kai uses "omae" when referring to Sayla, doubling down on his insult. Here's one of those differences in the sub and dubbed versions that causes some confusion. In the subbed version, Kai says he knows who Sayla is, and he even stutters over her name a little bit. In the English dub, he just says, "You don't know me, your name is Sayla, right?" Which is just confusing. Why they changed the first part of the line is unclear, but it definitely makes Kai seem like some kind of psychic or something. Again, and not to beat a dead horse, but this line from Sayla is meant to reinforce the level of disrespect that Kai is showing her that English-speaking audiences just might not have picked up on. Maybe in the dubbed version, he could have called her a broad or a shrew or some other pejorative that would have really showed how rude he was being. So this is a cool little detail that really opened up the story for countless spin-offs and side stories in the franchise. When instructed to destroy the Gundam components in order to prevent Zeon from capturing them, Amuro points out that there are enough parts to build 3 more Gundams. So there's this super short flashback scene as Frau Bo passes her old house that not only shows us how heartbroken she is to be leaving home, but also gives us a sense of innocence lost, days when she used to spend afternoons at Amuro's house before dinner, and she just watched Amuro kill 2 men, which she must be wrestling with internally as well. Halfway through the episode, Sayla happens upon Char as she's looking for survivors, and we get this scene where Char takes off his mask. Now, this is a pretty common trope in stories where the villain is unmasked, but never is it done this early in the story. Furthermore, he's not some disfigured monster, but rather a handsome young man. It's in this moment when I really start to think that Char Aznable, not Amuro Ray, is the real main character of this story. Similar to Herman Melville's Moby Dick, in which neither the whale of the title nor the narrator Ishmael is the main character, rather we're told the story of Captain Ahab's revenge through the eyes of Ishmael, in this case we're watching Char's revenge story through the eyes of Amuro. It's a trope that's so common that even George Lucas has said that Anakin Skywalker is the main character of Star Wars, not Luke. Speaking of which, we get an Empire Strikes Back style moment as well when both Sayla and Char recognize each other as siblings. As Char is escaping from the colony, Amuro is in pursuit, and we are strongly reminded that Amuro is not a soldier. Perhaps he's barely even a man, as he tries to line up a shot on Char using the Gundam's beam rifle. He's fighting back tears, and eventually he closes his eyes when he pulls the trigger. He's no hardened combat veteran, he's just a kid that's in over his head. Now, as if in response to the hesitation that we saw from him before, Amuro shows us his skills when he dispatches 2 missiles that are headed directly for White Base as it's leaving port. It's a small detail, but it shows us that Amuro has no problem protecting others or destroying inanimate objects, but the idea of taking a life is something that causes him a great deal of distress. Here's another example of that third-person characterization when the captain tells the crew about Char's combat prowess and infamy after destroying 5 battleships at the Battle of Loom. Alright, this is an exciting moment because it is the first of many duels between Char and Amuro, and we get to see their first impressions of one another. On the one hand, Amuro is terrified of Char's tricky piloting abilities as he dodges shots from the Gundam's beam rifle and easily gets in behind and flanks him. But on the other, Char is blown away by the raw power of the Gundam and Amuro's aggressive, forward-facing fighting style. Both men are sizing each other up, and neither really feels like they have the upper hand. Now here's a moment we see Char kind of realize just how lucky he's gotten. Slender's Zaku is destroyed in one shot from the Gundam's beam rifle, and Char is left speechless. He's been skilled enough to avoid being hit so far, but I think right now is when he decides that he's not going to push his luck. The episode closes out with Bright and Amuro meeting for the first time. Now, I don't know what Amuro was expecting, but he definitely wasn't planning on being berated by Bright for relying too much on the Gundam. This is a real drill sergeant moment from Bright because he seemingly doesn't want to be cruel, but he chooses to be strict and harsh with Amuro in an attempt to force him to grow up. Both men need each other, and the fact that Amuro gestures to Frau Bo not to defend him against Bright suggests that they both understand why this adversarial relationship is necessary for them. Alright, that is it for episode 2, and it was absolutely packed with character building moments, revelations, and setting us up for the story ahead. We're starting to see more and more that Char might not be the monster he's been made out to be, and that Amuro is definitely not some John Wick style action hero. We got to meet more of the White Base crew members and see how they might prove to be valuable assets or huge liabilities in the future. If you guys are digging this series, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will catch you later.